So parents and families and community members who are joining us this evening, thank you so much. This has been almost a year that we've been in this situation, and hard to believe. You know, I can't thank you enough for the support that you've given the school district and the support that you've given, you know, your children in working with us in partnership. I know how challenging it's been, and we just all truly appreciate it. With me this evening, I have a lot of folks here from the district who are going to help answer some questions. And I also have two of our school board members who are with us. And so I have our school board member, school board president, Dwayne Smith, who's here. And I don't know, Dwayne, did you want to say hello?
Yes, I'll just say hello. There's a lot of information going forward, so I won't take up much time. Just hello, and thanks everybody for attending.
Thank you. And I know we also have our school board member, Deshaun Woolridge as well. And Mr. Woolridge, did you want to say hello?
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you all for coming, and hopefully you guys get some concrete information out of this presentation.
Thank you. And so during this format, you can put any of your questions in the Q&A, and you should find that bottom at that tab at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And you can also put things in the chat. And then we have a lot of folks who will answer those during the webinar. And then we'll also collect some of the main questions to answer at the end as well too. Again, this is a webinar format. We cannot see you. We cannot hear you. So, but you can see and hear me and any of us who are in the panelist. If you need American Sign Language interpretation, ASL interpretation, hopefully you already see that we have Amy, and then we also have Michaela who'll be switching off. So just give yourself a chance to make sure you can get your laptop set up or pin them, but this is how you will see the presentation. All right, next slide, please. So this evening, I'm going to go through the latest state and county updates. You know, almost every day and sometimes more than once throughout the day, things change. So I'm going to give you the latest updates on that. We're going to look at the case rates of COVID-19 in our county and also locally in Pittsburgh. I'm going to tell you about our phase-in approach with the possible timeline for having in-person teaching and learning. And we're going to go over what we're doing to get ready for in-person learning and also what hybrid would look like. Go over some next steps. We'll take some questions and I'll have answers for those. And again, put any of your questions and answers in the Q&A during, and team members are going to be answering those in real time as well. But we'll take some main questions and answers at the end. And then we'll have a poll. So the same survey that we've put out for all of our parents and families, we want to take it during these webinars as well too, even if you've already taken it, just to get better information for us. Okay, next. So state and county update. So currently Contra Costa County is in the purple tier. That's the most restrictive tier. If the trend continues where the cases are going down, our county expects to be in the red tier in the second or third week of March. It's not an exact science to predict it, but they're predicting it'll be about the second or third week of March. The movements from tiers are typically made on Tuesdays. So today you may have heard in the news that a few other counties in the Bay Area have moved to the red tier. So it's typically that announcement's made on Tuesdays. The link that I have below has great information from the Contra Costa County Health. You can see the rates, you can see a lot of detail on the information of COVID-19. Another major update is that vaccines are now available for all educators, and an educator is defined on anyone working in our school system. So all of our employees in PUSD are now able to get appointments for vaccinations when they're available. They don't always get them when they want. It takes some time, but they've opened that up. So again, vaccines are now available for educators. So that's been positive news for those who choose to get them. And so people are going online, booking their appointments, and getting their vaccinations. Just this week, yesterday in fact, the governor and the legislature reached a deal. And during that deal, there's some things that already stayed the same and some things that are different. But in essence, the summary is that TK6 can have in-person school in the purple tier under some certain conditions. Pittsburgh isn't doing that. We're looking at the red tier. In the red tier, all grade levels can have in-person in a hybrid model. And so we'll go through what that would look like if that's what we do here. There are some incentives that are monetary to have in-person instruction before April 1st, and then that gets portioned out without. But in essence, we will make the timeline that makes the most sense for us. Next slide, please. These are the current case rates. These are updated every day, but I'm looking at the every Tuesday as the marker. And so this is a chart that shows you all of the case rates over the last 14 days per 100,000 population. So you can see all of the cases in Contra Costa County. And then on the other side, you see all of the cases in Pittsburgh. And so you can see that we've been higher than the county during this whole time, but we're trending downward just like the county. And the next slide, please. There you go. This graph is the same information, but just showing it to you visually. So you can see the blue line is Contra Costa County and the orange line is Pittsburgh. You can see how Pittsburgh case rates have been so much higher than the counties. You can see the big spike that everyone had in December and then January, where there's a lot of concern, and then it's been going down quite steadily. The line on the bottom, this line on the very bottom of the chart that goes across between the 0 and the 200, that's approximately the line, just to give you a visual of where we would need to be for that red tier. So you can see the county is almost there. We had a slight increase here in Pittsburgh, but we would expect that to go as well as on the decline. So, and then I want to also let you know the website that I have at the bottom of the slide, that's something where we are reporting all of the cases that we've had in our school district. So I'll show you what that looks like on the next slide. There you go. So on that website that I showed you before, this is where you can see, for transparency, every week we'll update the cases that we've had in our school district. So that's anyone who is in person only. So people who are working fully remotely at home, or students who are fully at home and haven't been in our school sites, we don't count those. We're counting anyone who is in person who has been on our school sites. And so I want to show you this because during a hybrid, we will then update this for any students who would have a positive COVID-19 case as well too. Here you can see that in the student column, we have highlighted Parkside, Pittsburgh High School, and Willow Cove because we have some learning hubs at those schools and we have students at those schools. And then you'll also see that we have Pittsburgh High School sports because we have athletics going on. And so then that's where you would see that. But when we have in-person learning in the hybrid model, that's where we would put that. So it protects everyone's privacy, but also shows you what this, shows you the number of cases that are happening at our sites, just so for your information only. Okay, the next slide, please. So this is the possible timeline. And so taking a look from the far left of your screen moving forward, where we are right now is in full distance learning. We're doing assessments for students with disabilities. We've been preparing for in-person. We have some learning hubs that are happening, and these are supervised places where some of our students are able to work. They're doing their distance learning with their teacher on their laptop, but they're at our school site. And again, like indicated at the last slide, we do have that at Parkside and at Willow Cove. We're starting one at Stoneman. We have it at the high school, and then we have a couple in the community in partnership with the county. We are also participating in any of the athletics that are allowed. So athletic conditioning has been allowed during this time. And then there are some other sports that have started and with those schedules. And so those teams have their procedures in place, and we're starting that with athletics. The next phase, if you go the next column over, sorry, if you could go back to there you go, to the next column over, we're still in full distance learning in March. We're continuing with all the activities we had from the previous column. And then we want to start bringing some of our students with disabilities for some services. Now, the timeline for when we would be able to come back for a hybrid would be after our spring break. And so again, this is what we're looking at after our spring break. I think that's when our case rates will be down if we follow the county's rates, and ours are a week or two after. And we'll be ready to bring some students back into hybrid learning if that's what the board approves for the schedule. And again, parents and families will always have the option for full distance learning already. So we would start with our youngest students and then also have services for our students with disabilities, K-12, and then some of our students who are beginning English learners. A week or so later, we would phase in the next group of students as well. Another option is we could start with the pre-K 2 and then also start with the 1 grade level at our junior high school and 1 grade level at our high school, and then phase in more the week after. So that gives you a sense of the timeline. This would be happening after spring break. Remember, our county's still in the purple. The county expects to be out of the purple in mid to the 2nd or 3rd week of March, late March. We think our rates in Pittsburgh would be down after that. And then we have our spring break. So our spring break goes from March 31st through that first week of April. So then we would be coming back right after the spring break. And again, we'll work with our labor partners on bargaining any of the impacts. Next slide, please. All right, so I want to show you a little bit of video of what this would look like when we come back for hybrids. I know there's probably questions around that. So we created this video in the fall when we were thinking it would be sooner. So not everything is exact in here, but it gives you a visual of the work that we've been doing, but also what hybrid would look like. It's about 5 minutes. We're going to show you the video, and then I'm going to go through some more specifics around the hybrid and what that would look like, including the preparations that we have in place. Okay, thank you. We can show the video now. Hello, I'm Janet Schultz, the very proud superintendent of Pittsburgh Unified School District. While we are starting the school year in full distance learning, we always hope that there will be a time sometime soon, we don't know when we can return to in-person hybrid. We won't know when that time will be because it depends on the guidance and the directions that we get from the state of California and the Contra Costa County Health Department. We will keep you updated on when those conditions change, and there will be a transition period from full-time distance learning to in-person hybrid learning. We want to give you a preview of what that may look like when we are in-person hybrid learning. And we want to highlight some of the health and safety procedures we are doing during this time.
Hello, I'm Matt Velasco, Director of Maintenance, Operations, and Transportation here at Pittsburgh Unified School District. Today, I'm here at the District Site Support Services Center to show you our school buses and the measures we're taking for the safety of our scholars, staff, and families. Our school bus drivers will be wearing face coverings at all times. They will be doing a required health screening every morning. Windows will be open when weather conditions allow for better air circulation. drivers will be doing temperature checks of students at all stops. Children with fevers will not be allowed on the bus. Seats will be blocked off for physical distancing. We will have set cleaning and sanitizing schedules that we will be following each day. After each route, the bus will be thoroughly cleaned and disinfected by the mechanics team and drivers. The transportation leadership team will ensure that these protocols are followed at all times. Parents, you will be notified if your child or children are not following these guidelines. The Pittsburgh Unified School District Transportation Department is working together to ensure we can safely transport students to and from school.
Hello, my name is Nelson Alegria, the Supervisor for Site Safety and Emergency Preparedness for Pittsburgh Unified School District. Part of my job is to monitor COVID-19 related guidelines from the state, Contra Costa Health Services, and the CDC to ensure that Pittsburgh is following them accordingly. PUSD has received personal protective equipment, or PPE, from the state, and we've also purchased additional PPE. We have face shields, masks, sanitizer, gloves, plexiglass barriers, and more to help prevent germs from spreading to students and staff. The School Site Safety Committee has gone through safety signage for all school sites and facilities to remind everyone about good hygiene, physical distancing, staying 6 feet apart, wearing masks, and doing our part to help prevent the spread of COVID-19.
Hi, my name is Angela Nava. I'm Director of Child Nutrition with Pittsburgh Unified School District. My role here is to manage, oversee, and implement regulations and policies from USDA and California Department of Education. This includes following strict health and safety protocols in preparing and serving meals to our children throughout PUSD. During distance learning and over summer break, the Child Nutrition Department provided thousands of grab-and-go meals for our families. If you haven't already done so, I encourage you to fill out an application for free and reduced meals for your child as soon as possible. Each school year, a new meal application must be completed for your child or children. One application per household is sufficient. The Child Nutrition Department will be ready to serve students nutritious meals in a safe environment, and will continue to provide grab-and-go meals as well. We will be ready to adapt if state guidelines change.
I know you want to make sure your children are safe when they come back to school. That's why we have protocols in place to ensure our buildings are cleaned and disinfected on a daily basis. Frequently touched items such as desks, doorknobs, bathrooms, keyboards, and other areas will be sanitized regularly. We also have custodial crews ready to deep clean twice a week in between cohorts of students. This will ensure we are doing our very best to keep our schools clean.
Thank you to all of our students, teachers, staff, labor partners, parents and families, administrators, and our school board. We appreciate all of the feedback we have received over the last few months, and we have used it to develop the best and the safest plans to support the teaching and learning of our students during this time. Okay, thank you. And so we wanted to put together a video. Again, we did that, a few months ago, but it wanted to give a visual of what it would look like to show people as well too. And we're going to give you some more details about that right now. And so in essence, I'm going to break this down into two different parts. One, the schedules, and then we're going to show you what those look like, and then also some of the safety measures. And again, full distance learning does remain an option during this time. And again, any questions, please put them in the Q&A, the chat, and we'll have time for questions at the end as well too. So our schedules would mirror the current schedules as much as possible until we exactly know how many families are going to make that choice. We may have to make a few adjustments, but our goal is to not disrupt the relationship that your child has with his or her teacher, and also the schedule that you have been following this year. With the guidelines in place, it means that we will continue in cohorts. Your children are already in cohorts, so we will be keeping those the same as much as possible. If you think of your child's schedule now, when they have their time, their cohort time with the teacher in the morning, and then the afternoon might look a little bit different. In essence, what we're doing is that morning time is going to be the in-person time for your cohort. So that's anywhere from 3.5 to 4 hours, maybe a little more at the secondary, twice a week. And then the other in the afternoons, they're in distance. Wednesday remains a full distance learning day. So that's how we have for our schedule. So again, we're keeping the same schedules that we have now as much as possible. Your children remain in cohorts. They're already in cohorts. We have our in-person learning times and distance learning times. Our meals would all be grab and go. So you saw an example in the video of what that would look like in terms of taking the lunch and the breakfast for the next days. So any of our scholars who are in-person learning will be able to pick up their meals to go, and then we will continue to have the meal service for car pickup as well too. And full distance learning remains an option, again, remaining with your child's current teacher as much as possible. Safety measures, we've done a lot. We've gone through a lot of trainings, got everything in place. We'll be asking all of our parents to do a daily screening, making sure that your child is well before he or she comes to school. And there's the big three that we're going to be emphasizing at the school sites. And that's the masks, hand sanitizing, and keeping social distance. PUSD is going to be using 6 feet of social distance. You may hear some are doing 4 feet or 4 to 6 feet. We are doing 6 feet with our desks and in our hallways and everything. For the personal protective equipment, we have that for all of our staff members, and we have that for all of our scholars. And so anyone who's going for in-person learning, you will be receiving 5 cloth masks for your student. Go back to the previous slide, please. There you go. So everyone who is going back for in-person learning, you'll be receiving 5 cloth masks for each of your children and 2 or 3 of the face shields as well. We have signs around the school to really let our scholars know, remind them about social distancing, the importance of washing your hands. We have our ventilation. You saw Mr. Belasco in the video, and he's here tonight if you have any specific questions on ventilation, but we have all of our units set to the highest levels that they're able to do, including having fresh air going through on a regular basis. And of course, we have windows to be open. In any room that doesn't have that capacity, we also have standalone air units to go into those classrooms as well. We've trained all of our site teams. You heard Mr. Belasco talk about the training that all of the maintenance has gone through, but our admin has gone through trainings as well too, so that we have trainings around not just all of the safety plans, but how to do contact tracing if someone does have the symptoms or someone does test positive for COVID-19 as well. And then we have approved safety plans that we have to go through and have approval with the county health department. And we'll continue to bargain any impacts with our labor partners, our certificated and our classified partners. So that gives you some sense of the work that we've been doing and that we're ready for the hybrid. And then I'm going to ask Miss Eileen Chen to go to the next slide and just talk you through a little bit about what that will look like for elementary. Oh, Eileen, you're on mute. There you go.
Okay, start over. Good evening and thank you. This is a very simple schedule for elementary. You'll notice there are no exact times because we have different start times for all 8 elementary schools. But we will remain in Cohort A and Cohort B model. So let's look at the Monday schedule. What you'll see is Cohort A comes to school Monday morning. They will receive in-person instruction. They will be dismissed and go home. And as Dr. Schultz said, they will receive their grab and go lunch and breakfast for the following day. They will have independent practice for the rest of the afternoon. After lunch, Cohort B will log onto their computers and receive online instruction. And scholars who choose to remain in 100% distance learning will log on with the afternoon group to also receive online synchronous instruction. This schedule repeats itself for Tuesday, where the cohort switch and cohort B comes to school, while cohort A remains at home for instruction. And as Dr. Schultz mentioned, Wednesday, all students, both cohort A and cohort B, will remain at home. They will receive some online instructions together. And then the rest of the afternoon will be independent practice as it's designated for teacher planning and teacher meeting time. And then Monday's schedule repeats itself on Thursday, and Tuesday's schedule repeats itself on Friday. Thank you.
Thank you. So you can see it really mirrors what we're doing now and trying to keep that stability as much as possible with that. And right now I'd like to invite Mr. Molina. We'll go to the next slide, and Mr. Molina will review the junior high schedule.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. Similarly to elementary, and as Dr. Schultz has previously stated, it is our desire to keep students with their teachers. Those relationships are huge and set as closely as possible as we transition into hybrid, if and when we transition into hybrid at the junior high level, in their current schedules. So cohort A on Monday, as outlined, as you can clearly see, would have in-person instruction and or online instruction, depending on what families chose. Oops. We flip slides. There we go. All right. Thank you. And so the learning for cohort A would be in person in their regular first 3 periods on a Monday. And then after lunch, it would be the distance learning. It would be strictly online classes for cohort B, whether there was online learning or not. And then Tuesday, the schedule would flip. For cohort B, the in-person and distant learning options would happen in the morning for cohort B. And then after lunch, cohort A would have all of their classes in distance learning model. That is the Rancho MLK, and then 4th, 5th, and 6th would follow the same on Thursday, and then cohort B on Friday. Next slide. The Hillview model is a little bit different and is very similar to the high school. It's the same concept. Students would have their in-person learning with their cohort on the designated day and only in the mornings if they chose in person. It would be strictly distance learning for the check-ins in the afternoon, whether for in-person or whether it was to remain in distance learning. Moving on to the PHS schedule, please. Yes, and remember, we have semester units. We have credits that students towards graduation are working on. And so students would keep their current schedules as much as possible to remain with their teachers. And similarly to the junior highs, they would only be in person in the mornings for their first 3 periods. Currently, right now, we are in spring quarter, which is technically the spring semester at the high school because the students only have 3 classes, as you all know. And then when we transition into what was traditionally 4th quarter, that would be considered second semester for periods 4, 5, and 6. So periods 4, 5, and 6 would be similar to 1, 2, and 3 in that in the morning, students would have their in-person instruction along with those who remain in distance learning.
For your children, if you want them to return for the in-person or if you're going to remain in distance learning. So you would have through the 19th to make that decision so that we can then balance our schedules and make sure we have everything in place to get started after spring break. And again, we would continue to work with our labor partners on anything that we need to bargain for this as well too. So next slide. Q&A. So I think we can come back to the full screen maybe from the presentation until we're ready for the poll. And I'm going to see if there's some questions that were coming up as themes that any of our other panelists or people want to let me know, to see if there's something that I can answer. And I'll answer it if I can, or someone on our who's joining us may be able to answer as well too. And if we can't, we'll let you know that too. So there's some questions that.
Dr. Schultz, one question that has come up many times is the question about uniforms. Families are saying for a short time this spring with growing children and with the climate and the weather changes, they're wondering if uniforms for in-person are going to be required.
You know, that's a great question. I'm so glad you brought that up. We're going to make this as easy as possible for you to, we don't want any barriers. So if we need to have uniforms, we will have those ready. I know some of the schools already have them from them, but no, we're not going to have that as a barrier for returning for in-person.
Thank you. Another question, and I think for clarity, is around vaccinations. I did answer one of the question and answers that students do not need to be COVID vaccinated in order to return to school. But we do have our typical Tdap and other vaccinations that are required for students. Students are still required to have all of the vaccinations that they needed pre-dismissal, but COVID vaccinations is not.
Correct. But right now, the vaccine for COVID-19 is only available for people who are 16 years of age and older, and it's optional. You know, everyone's encouraged to get one, but that's a personal choice. The required vaccinations for anytime your child's in school, those do need to be up to date in order for them to be in-person learning. So your required vaccinations like the Tdap, the measles, the ones that you have to typically submit, those, you know, that doesn't change, and you would need to make sure that that's all up to date if we don't already have that. And in terms of for educators, it is not required for educators. The vaccines, again, are a personal choice. When vaccines are required, it's been because there's a law that's been passed. That does not happen in this case. If it does happen, then we will, of course, follow the law. But vaccinations right now are not required. Questions that are coming up?
There are some questions about the CSP COVID safety plan and if we've completed it, and also around the ventilation systems. I know we have Matt Belasco here as well.
So for the COVID safety plan, there's two components. We've completed the first component, which relates to workplace conditions that have to be in place. The second component, we have almost totally completed. We need to finalize our schedules, which is part of this, and add some of the things that we're doing this week, but we do have the draft of everything, and then that will be loaded as soon as we're done with that and then made public. If there's a specific ventilation question, then I'll refer that to Matt. But in general, what we've done is upgraded. We're running our systems at the fullest level that they're able to run, including the fresh air rotation at the fullest level. So instead of worrying too much about energy conservation, we're really running to make sure that the full fresh air would go through, and then those start. Is it an hour before school would come into play, Matt?
Yes, 1 hour before school.
I know more about HVAC than I thought I would, so I'm testing my own knowledge sometimes. But yes, we have that. And then if we have a classroom or an office that we feel doesn't have a ventilation that is able to have fresh air in, again, we do have standalone units that we've purchased just like you would for a home or for an office or a classroom. And those are able to then be air fresheners that circulate the air, because we know that that's one of the important safety measures.
And I did answer some of the questions that came up about ventilation. I'll continue to answer those as they come into the Q&A.
Thank you.
A lot of questions about masks. One question is, What's going to happen if students refuse to wear masks? Another question is, will my child not be able to attend if they have special needs and they can't wear their mask or they don't want to wear their mask? And the other question is, at what grade level would they start wearing their masks?
So the California Department of Public Health has their guidelines around that, and masks are required. So masks will be required for any student who is coming for in-person learning. In the cases of our students with disabilities who may not tolerate a mask, that's going to be an individual case. We have a whole other order of personal protective equipment for the teachers for those classrooms as well too. And so that would be handled individually for those situations with that. But masks are required for in-person.
Some people may have joined late or maybe just are not clear on the timeline again. Some people are asking if classes will start before spring break, which students can come earlier or sooner. I don't know if we can repeat maybe the timeline.
So the tentative timeline we have now is to start right after spring break. We are working with our labor partners to have some services for some designated services for students with disabilities that we may be able to start before our spring break, but in terms of our K2 and our hybrid model, that is all would be right after our spring break.
If one chooses to remain in full distance learning, will they have the option to change their decision at any time?
You know, that's a great question. And so right now, how we will do it is once you make that decision, we're going to stay in that decision. And for a couple of reasons, because it's important to have that the stable cohort as much as possible. And so if we have students attending together in their cohort and then suddenly other students want to come in, we would have to really think about what that looks like. So because there's time frames that we have to follow along with that. So if you choose to go into in-person learning, you would stay in in-person learning. You can make a choice to go to distance. But when you're in distance learning, that is a choice for remaining in distance, most likely through the rest of this school year, because with the timeframes of how we would I'm not sure we'd be able to make that work. So again, it would be an individual situation. A lot would depend on the grade level, the class, the number of students who are already in person, and any other options like that.
Here's a great question as well. How soon will we be notified if a staff member or student has COVID? Once you have been informed, and then what will the process be?
Right, so we've gone through training. So right now, all of our contact tracing is done through human resources for our employees. But at the school sites, then your school site administrator would be the one who would notify. And it would depend on the situation. So I'll give you an example. Let's say we have a third grade cohort class, and the class, there's a student who tested positive for COVID-19 in that class. So depending on when they tested positive and when they had symptoms, because we work with the County Department of Health with this, right? But if they were in their class during that time, then all of the families of the other students who were in that class would be notified. And depending on the circumstances, there may be a quarantine then for up to 2 weeks.
Thank you. Another question is around that same, how many students per class? How many students would be allowed to be in a class?
So using the 6 feet model, most of our classes will be anywhere from 10 to 14 scholars in a classroom at any given time.
Here's a good question as well. CASP testing, how will hybrid work with CASP testing?
You know, that's a great question. We're getting more information on that. There was a recent decision that the CASP testing can be done in distance if you're in distance, but if you're in person, the state doesn't want you to spend your first parts of in-person learning around CASP testing. It wouldn't start until 3 weeks or so after the scholars were in the in-person. And it's going to be, parents will have the option of taking the CASP, having their child participate in the CASP test this year. What the federal government has done is they've taken away the mandates that we had. And so the attendance mandate that we've had in previous years won't apply this year. So in previous years, we had to have 95% of our students who on those years who were eligible for the CASP take the CASP. We don't have to have that this year because of the circumstances of so many schools being in between distance and hybrid. So we will use our internal assessments and we will participate in the CASP to some level. The state has modified the CASP as well to make it a little bit shorter.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge I'm kind of going out of order with a lot of questions, and thank you to all the staff who's answering in the chat. I'm reading the Q&A. But Dr. Schultz, another one that's coming up too is, are parents going to be allowed on campus to go into the classrooms to drop their kids off and to volunteer?
No. So we are going to be limiting our parent and community members going into the classroom or going into the school. It would be if you had an emergency or something, but now we have to have a sign-in and we would work to bring your child to you if there was some situation like that. So we are going to be limiting people coming on our campus for very, very small reasons. So we're not looking at having volunteers on campus for the remainder of this school year.
Thank you. Another question is around if you choose to be, there's still a little bit of confusion maybe around if my child is in distance learning and maybe they attend Rancho Medanos as an example that's in the Q&A, and my neighbor's child is in person and they have the same teacher, how is that teacher going to teach distance learning and in person at the same time?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And so what we're thinking is that in the secondary schools versus trying to change your schedules, we are going to have the ability we want the students to be watching and doing that. They might be at home and kind of tuning in via a Zoom. So, and then in the afternoon, when there is the distance learning time, they would participate in that as well too.
Thank you.
And then again, Mr. Molina, if there's anything else you want to add to that piece, jump in. We'll have some other special options probably available as well too.
No, you did. That was very clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Another question is about PE classes. PE classes are typically larger, and of course you're exerting yourself. But what would PE look like at the high school, particularly? They asked.
So we have guidelines for athletic conditioning that we've been following. So we would use that in PE as well too. And so there's things you can do in terms of spreading out outside, and the students are masked, and there's exercises and different things that they can do that are safe. And we've got some great examples that we can use with the athletic conditioning that we have been doing since about October. We've had some pods of students doing some exercises and things outside.
Another question for some people who may have come late. Do you want to reiterate that parents have the choice of in-person or distance?
Yes, absolutely. So when we return for a hybrid in-person, parents do have the option to remain in full distance learning. And so that option will remain. And so the week after we have the board meeting on the 10th, then on the 11th, you'll receive a letter with more of the detailed information. If we are going to move to that schedule that I showed you a little bit ago, preparing for spring break, then you'll be asked to register in a sense, not a full registration, but register in a sense your preference, and and we're asking you to make a commitment at that time. So that will be through March 19th, and you'll have to make a decision as a family. Is your child going to attend for the in-person hybrid or the distance learning? That will allow us to, by each school site, look at what all the responses are and make sure we have all of the best placements that we can.
Dr. Schultz, can I say a clarification regarding testing? I just want to clarify that LPAC testing, parents cannot opt out.
Yes, Yeah, the answer I gave was for CASP, but LPAC testing for our students or English learners does have to occur. Correct.
Thank you. And Ms. Chen, you just brought up another good one. Elementary is breaks and recesses. What might those look like for students?
That's a great question, and that's something that we would need to explore further to ensure that we remain. We follow all the social distancing requirements, but as well as recognize that wiggle breaks and mental breaks are necessary during the morning session.
So yeah, so what we would do is is stagger, and those specific timelines will be done at each school site. So it might stagger so that all of our scholars have an opportunity to be outside, get a break while maintaining social distance, and then they would be in, and then another group would go out, so that we would be staggering instead of everyone having recess at once. We would have to stagger it as well.
Another good question that's coming up. We have some families that have multiple children in our schools. And so one of the questions is, will siblings in different schools be in the same cohort?
Well, you will pretty much be in the cohort that you have now as a family. And then each school site will make adjustments if they're able to, if the day is something that is a real issue for your family. And again, once we have the final numbers of who's making that choice, that'll be easier for us to know. But those types of things will be worked out at the individual school sites with that. But conceptually, how you can think of it is that your child's schedule now will remain the same. So the cohort that they've been with in distance learning is the cohort of students that they would be with in person as well too.
I've tried to capture as many big ideas as possible. I do see one that just came in the chat, which would be summer school this year.
Yes, there is going to be summer learning this year. We're excited that after budget cuts, when we had to reduce the elementary, we are able to have elementary summer learning this year as well too, because of the one-time funds the state has given us. So we'll be having summer school credit recovery for our high school students. We'll be having the Summer Math Institute that we do in partnership with Los Medanos College. And we will also have summer learning options for our elementary and our junior high school students. And so I know you're going to want to know, are they in person? Are they distance? We'll get more information as we get closer to that, but most likely if the rates are down, and we will have in person, and then if we have some families who are still choosing distance, we'll try and have some distance options as well too, to balance and follow all the guidelines, but we will have summer school.
Great. And I know as we're kind of getting ready to go to a poll and wrap up, I also wanted to can you just one more time acknowledge that this is recorded and that we will be posting it on the website?
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. It is. We are recording this and we'll post this as well so that people can look through it. And then, we'll have another webinar to go through more details as well too, after we have that board meeting and we have all of those and we get the final numbers from our families and work on that as well too. So we'll have more opportunities. I know we wanted to make sure we left time for a poll, so I'm going to ask Kevin to get the poll ready as well. And these are the questions that you have received as a survey, but even if you've taken it as a survey, it's super helpful for us to do it as a poll as well. When we report the information out, I'm going to report it out where you will have your, survey, but then also the results by poll. So don't worry about it mixing. And again, if you've already submitted the survey, go ahead and take the poll too, because we want to make sure that we capture the information in the webinar. As you can see, there's a lot of information that goes behind planning for all of this. And of course, your decisions that you'll be making as a family as well too. So you should see at the bottom of your Zoom screen a way where you can put on polls. There should be a little icon and you can click that and you should be able to take the poll at this time. Correct, Kevin?
Yes, the poll is up now. Folks are taking it. We have 59 of the 62 of the 205 folks we have here have already taken the poll.
Perfect. So we'll go ahead and have, please go ahead and take this poll, and then I'll continue to answer any questions while you're doing it as well too. And again,
There was a question about after-school programming being in place as well.
all right, Mr. Molina or Miss Handy, do you want to address anything with after-school program? And yes, if you've already taken the survey, please take the poll.
I've been trying to answer the questions as they've been coming in. And as of right now, we will continue to be in distance and virtual learning with our after-school programs until further notice. And I will update you as soon as I can.
Thank you, Ms. Handy.
You're quite welcome.
And welcome, for anyone who hasn't met her yet, because we've been in distance learning. This is our new to Pittsburgh Unified School District, Miss Handy, who's running our after-school programs, and a Pittsburgh person as well, and came to us from Berkeley. So we're happy to have her, and welcome.
Thank you.
And again, I saw a couple things pop through about meals. The meals will be eaten off campus. So your child will be getting grab and go to go with that. We want to limit the amount of students, because eating together is one of those activities that could be riskier in that sense. So we're doing as much as we can to have them take the meals with them, and then we'll continue to do the grab and go for anyone in distance learning as well too. So you'll be able to get them drive-through meal pickup service like we have now, that maybe we'll adjust a little. And then the students, the scholars who are in person, will be also able to take their meals. So for example, if they're there on a Monday, they might take their lunch and their breakfast for the next day with them, because we'll want them to have already eaten breakfast before they come for in-person. How are we doing on our poll?
We are doing well. We have about 155 out of 201 so far. So we got about 77% here, so.
That's great. Let's get them more in. Let's try and get 90.
Dr. Schultz or Matt, there was also questions about sanitation and cleaning classrooms in between students, particularly at secondary, where students may be transitioning between classes. So they're asking what the protocols for that would be.
So our protocols would be to ensure that every classroom is cleaned each day and at the end of the evening. We have not identified how that will look if students change classes. We'll continue to have to work on that plan and process and protocols.
So we have a protocol for our elementaries, and then we also have for the elementaries, they'll have their assigned desk, and they'll have their own kit of their school supplies that will be unique to them. So they'll be the only ones touching that. So they'll be unique to them with the elementary. At the secondary, it's a little more complicated because the schedules, they do change their classes. But as the California Department of Public Health has let us know, the biggest factor is really the individuals doing the hand sanitizing, wearing the mask and the social distance, and of course, keeping the ventilation. That they've shown that there is low risk with the touch, with that type of transmission. We have installed hand sanitizer units in each of our classrooms, so that as a student leaves, it's very easy for them to grab some hand sanitizer going out of a classroom, coming into a classroom, and we've also put them around all of the buildings as well too. And so again, they'll have an assigned desk that's for them. And then with the older students, we may have to look at some things a little bit differently, but we have some really good things in place as well, and everything's set with our sanitizing stations as well. So the biggest things we want to emphasize is the mask wearing, the social distance, and then that frequent hand washing and use of hand sanitizer.
So maybe we'll end the polling. It's been kind of slowing down quite a bit. It's at 163 of 198. It's at 82%, which is pretty good.
Okay,
Shall we just go ahead and end it for now?
sure. And do we all want to see the results in real time?
Yes, I do.
A couple questions that we've been seeing as well too. If your child's participating in the Blueprint math program, that math tutoring, that will continue. And that's going to be continuing distance. A lot of those math tutors are college students or right out of college students who may not live close enough for this, but the Blueprint math tutoring program, that will continue. That's actually going to continue through next year as well. So if the math question was about that, that will continue. We're going to continue using paper. Any of these are families who have a secondary student, I really want to encourage you to use paper. It is an online tutoring system. It's available 24/7. It's chat only. No video, and it's through the tutor does not give your child the answer, but ask them a series of questions to help guide them to that answer. They can also use paper to get feedback on any of their written essays that they may have for English or social studies or science. If they have a paper, they can submit it to paper. And after 24 hours, they will get that first draft feedback like they would from their teacher. And so again, want to encourage you to make sure that you're taking advantage of paper. Your child can get to it through their Clever account, and that's available for secondary. That will continue as well too. In fact, we're going to continue that through next year as well to keep giving our scholars additional support.